Kelly O'Donnell joins us now. Kelly O'Donnell is at the White House for us. And Kelly O, we know that Governor Chris Christie is behind you. A day after President Trump fired Attorney General Jeff Sessions. What more do we know about why the former governor is there?
Well, sometimes coincidences are curious things, Craig. And what I'm told by multiple sources is that the former New Jersey governor is here invited by the president's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, for a meeting about prison reform. And Christie is among the invited former U.S. attorneys, former federal prosecutors who have an interest in this issue, who were invited to participate in a meeting here today. It happens to be the day after the day after. We saw the midterms pass. We saw the resignation of the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, and Chris Christie is here. He is someone who has publicly expressed interest in a role like that. I have multiple sources saying that he and the president speak with some frequency, and that both President Trump and the former governor know where each other stands on the issue of a potential role for Christie in an administration, in the position of Attorney General at the Department of Justice. They each know what their thinking is on this. My past reporting shows that Christie had been offered up to 5 different roles in the administration while he was still the sitting governor of New Jersey, and declined all of those, wanting to complete his full 8 years, 2 terms as the New Jersey governor. He's been out of office now for, is it a year? And has been serving as a political analyst, writing a book. He's an attorney, of course. So here today, but also here today, was Lindsey Graham, the South Carolina senator who had attended the Kavanaugh investiture with the president. We spotted Lindsey Graham going into the Oval Office. He's also someone who would have the right resume for a position like that, has been asked about it, has said publicly he does not want the position of Attorney General. What will happen with Chris Christie and this opening that has now materialized? One source said, Lord knows what will happen given the relationship he has had with the president. But they remain friendly, been friends for about 16 or 17 years. He is on the grounds of the complex today for an unrelated meeting. But again, timing can be a tricky thing.
Kelly, we should also point out that Senator Lindsey Graham insisted to Savannah Guthrie on election night that he had no interest in becoming Attorney General. But going back to Chris Christie for a moment, there is a bit of a history between Governor Christie and the president's son-in-law, as I understand it. It was Chris Christie who put Jared Kushner's dad in prison.
That's right. When he was the U.S. attorney, he was, of course, in charge of the department that did file charges against Charles Kushner. That has always been a delicate relationship, but it was Jared Kushner who serves not only as a senior advisor on a lot of issues, but the portfolio of prison reform is significant for him. He invited Christie here. They have at times had a touchy relationship, as our reporting has long indicated, but it is also many years since that time. And Christie was a surrogate at times during the campaign, certainly had been the first prominent U.S. official to endorse Trump. He, of course, ran for president himself and was out after the New Hampshire primary. So it is a delicate relationship. It is something that when we go back and look at the issue of Christie as a finalist in the VP running, the running mate stakes that we all watch so closely, the relationship with Kushner was considered a roadblock at that time. Of course, Mike Pence was ultimately selected. Christie was the runner-up, if you will, expressed disappointment at that time. But that seems like a long time ago now. What will happen next, we don't know. But with this new vacancy, we're running all the traps.
All right. Kelly O'Donnell for us at 1600 Pennsylvania. Kelly O, thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.